Today on Valley Chat, it is part 2 of John and my conversation around winter guests and the things we love about them. Hey Shepherd family, this is Pastor Scott Seidler. Pastor John Carolus and I have been in a conversation for the past couple months about all the things we love and miss about our winter guests. And it was about 6-7 weeks ago that we did our first things we love and miss about our winter guests, and it was about the topic of the geography, the different places and spaces from which our winter guests come, and the unique things that we love about what they bring from places like, Canada, Wisconsin, Florida, New York, that kind of thing. In this particular Valley Chat, we're going to talk not about geography, but about a different category, and that is the church's experiences that our winter guests bring. And so, John, as you think about church experiences that our winter guests uniquely bring, I think about the dichotomy of contemporary worship spaces versus more traditional congregational experiences. Talk a little bit, because you really anchor our Mountain View Contemporary campus. What are some things that our winter guests bring, especially those who worship here at Mountain View for contemporary worship?
It's fun to think about how all over the country contemporary worship means something slightly different to every community, to every congregation, even to every denomination.
Right.
And so contemporary worship in many settings is the other service that happens in the same sanctuary. And we're blessed to have a ministry that functions in two spaces. And so I know one thing that our winter guests love about Shepherd is that there's kind of this dedicated space for each of those worship experiences. And because we have that freedom and that gift, we're able to tailor those worship experiences directly and intentionally into the kind of service and liturgy and flow and feel that comes with that. And when the winter guests come from all their various different places and all their various contexts, they're bringing with them the joys of likely having been a part of starting contemporary worship at their church,
right,
or maybe a big advocate for it in their church, and coming to Shepherd and enjoying, having found something that they really enjoy here and
right,
are able to contribute to as well.
Love
How about you, when you think about traditional worship and our winter guests and coming over to that Shea traditional experience, what do you find?
Well, as you were talking about contemporary worship, I think that one of the fun little pieces of having winter guests is that if they come from a traditional venue or context, sometimes they come to the Mountain View campus because, oops, don't tell my pastor, but I'm coming to a contemporary place, because they don't have contemporary worship or maybe high quality contemporary worship in the context that they're at. And so that is always kind of funny when I find out like someone's from a very traditional Lutheran church and yet they're coming to Mountain View, because during the winter, sometimes to mix things up, it's really just a joyful thing. And our winter guests bring a lot of life and vitality. I know that when they come to our Shea campus, the things that they celebrate, communion every service, every Sunday. Of course, that's also true at the Mountain View campus. Kneeling communion, in a kind of a circular format. It gives me joy when the different practices and habits of traditional worship get matched up, and now you're in a different context, and so you're forced to do things differently. And I love when I hear about different practices and disciplines of worship back in their hometowns, where I think to myself, now that would be really cool to bring in. Or, for instance, a song or a hymn that is being sung somewhere else that I really don't know. And so, we can do anything at least once. That's and right. So I'll just throw in hymns, left and right, just because. And so that traditional kind of overlap has been a fun thing. Okay, here's the next one. Next dichotomy. John, winter guests that come from large churches versus small churches. I'll start. I'm going to start with small church, and you do the large church, but I love when winter guests come. We're a middle-sized church, so we're not at Shepherd small or large. When winter guests come from a small context, they remind me of what real community looks like. They know the people that they worship with. They maybe have been worshiping with the same people in the small context for a really long time. And that encourages me to remember that in order for a church to get larger, you got to figure out ways to make it smaller. And so small churches make a difference. There's more smaller churches in this world than big churches. And so it's just an encouragement to me when I hear about warm stories of small, sometimes rural churches where community matters. But we've got a lot of folks from big churches like Frankenmuth and Cornerstone and Carmel. Talk about big church winter guests.
And before diving completely into large church, I think another just little aspect of coming from a smaller church into Shepherd is there's maybe a sense of relief or rest from some of the level of involvement that small church involves.
Great point.
And requires maybe is too strong of a word. And it's not that anyone doesn't want to be involved in a deep way in their church, but there's so much family ownership and tradition that comes with, this is the family that leads that particular program or handles the decoration of the sanctuary at Christmas or this kind of thing. And so coming into a little bit larger setting does bring a little bit of rest and relief, especially I think for retirees who put in decades of faithful service in their church. And now they're able to do that at Shepherd, but in a different way. And when they come from a large church, you get the converse kind of effect where now here's a church where I have the opportunity to know a greater ratio of people and have more of an affinity with the people that see me and recognize me.
Have a chance to grab breakfast, lunch, or coffee with the pastor.
To know the one, the person on the stage or the person in the chancel, and to actually have a meaningful relationship with them, or the band members or other ministry staff. It's like,
love it.
You're not limited to the intimate connection you can have with ministry staff at Shepherd. You can get to know everybody, and we all would love to get to know you and support you and feel your support as well. And so that's really an enjoyable piece of the puzzle is coming from a large setting, coming into what still feels like home, still feels fresh, still feels very alive and dynamic, but isn't a sea that you get lost in. Which brings up kind of another dichotomy, I think, which is churches that are very historical, churches that have more than 100 years, of community presence, and therefore 100 years of legacy, and not in a bad way are they more static. It's just that those routines are more established.
Right.
And churches that are much more dynamic and much more active and maybe exploring different ways that they can be involved. As you think about winter guests coming from those settings, deeply historical and regular in their community involvement, or trying new things, less history, newer church plants, what are some of the things that come to mind with the winter guest for you?
So Shepherd is, 45 years old, and I think it's a great point to be made. The kingdom of God is constantly moving. So if you're in a Gothic church, that's like 100 gazillion years old, you come to Shepherd, and in Arizona, which again, Scottsdale, Phoenix, Arizona, 80, 90,000 new people every year. I mean, the statistics are staggering. There's a lot. My point is, there's a lot of churn, and so when you come to Shepherd, you bring that stability, but you're also getting refreshed by a little bit of the churn. We make decisions kind of fast. We don't have a lot of history we need to think about. We've been in some transition critically over the past 8 to 10 years, and so therefore, we've had to become a different church even in the last 5 to 6 years. On the other side, if you're in a church that is, scrapping just to stay alive, to, make it for the next decade, beyond your first decade, it can be kind of nice coming to a church with 2 campuses, been around for 45 years, and just feel like, wow, the ship is not always sinking, or, we're waiting for a pastoral transition to take place. It can be a nice stabilizing experience too.
And that whole idea captures, I think, the broader conversation around winter guests, which is snowbirding is a great way to get relief from a harsh winter, or a great way to escape summer heat, a chance to connect with people in a similar stage of life and therefore form new community and create new memories. And our role as a church for these people, for our dear friends and family members, is along that same vein of thinking. This is a place where you can form deep and meaningful relationships with people in similar seasons of life as you and create those new memories, while also having the opportunity to connect with those who are in a completely different stage of life.
Right.
And that goes maybe back to church size, but there's a growing number of young couples over on the Shea campus. There's families that maybe have connection to our preschool or are just new to the area coming over to Mountain View, and they are looking for the wisdom and the mentorship and the encouragement of the generations that have experienced more of life than them. So this is a church that creates that special kind of opportunity to overlap.
I would want to move into a little bit more of a sensitive subject, because winter guests know that they are here for a period of time. Could be a couple weeks, could be a few months, and sometimes the vacation that you get in the Southwest is also an opportunity for spiritual refreshment. If, back home, the church is struggling, it's a conflicted environment, maybe there's stuff going on in your family or circle of friends that is, toxic at worst or just exasperating, at best. And so, I hope that, and we hope that Shepherd can be a place of Sabbath rest, a little oasis in the desert, so to speak. And I think when winter guests bring what I'll call, that kind of church baggage or spiritual baggage with them, here at Shepherd, we don't see that as a negative. We just see that pastorally as this is life. There are good days, there are bad days, there are easy seasons, there are challenging seasons. And we want you to know as winter guests that whatever you bring here, if this can be a little bit of a Sabbath rest from the rigmarole back home, we certainly want to be receptive to that, great listeners, encouragers, so that you can maybe take a rest from the battle, get some R&R. I think of the television show MASH, taking R&R down in Seoul, South Korea. But that's a real value for us, because we recognize that sometimes coming from, especially in a church environment, there are unhealthy churches that are struggling. We're grateful Shepherd is not one of them at this stage. God willing, we won't be for a long time. But for us, we want you to be able to come here and rest and find rest for your souls in a church where you don't have to worry about fights or budget problems or leadership problems or governance problems, those kinds of things.
And I think there's a really healthy way to recognize that there are churches that are in unhealthy places and churches that are in generally healthy places, but every church has unhealthy things, unhealthy pockets or challenging situations. And if your involvement in your church at home or your home base is one that does cause a great deal of stress or exhaustion, or as you mentioned, if things are just happening in your life that are causing stress and exhaustion, Shepherd is that cushion, that place where you can find rest. And you don't need to feel this pressure to get deep into the weeds of involvement, because there are people that you trust who are involved in those places in Shepherd, the administration, the board leadership, the programming organization, and things like that. And if that's your jam, if you love to be deeply involved, we welcome that involvement and investment as well. And you can be a part of helping us navigate the challenges that we do have and the stressors that we do walk through.
And we'll say thank you, by the way, because when you show up with all of your spiritual experience and proclivities, inclinations, idiosyncrasies, eccentricities, when you show up here at Shepherd as a winter guest, you provide a great service for Pastor John and myself and Pastor Alan and our whole Shepherd team, because you spice the whole place up. You create churn in this Christian community, and you come in and you don't know where people are supposed to sit, so you just sit down and you move people's cheese. And so by doing that, you help us keep in mind as a congregation that there's a bigger church out there. So I can't wait for you to come here, sit down in a pew, in a chair, displace someone who normally sits there at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning or 9:30 at Mountain View. And just that kind of churn, that kind of variability is really a great value in church. And so that's why I love our winter guests, and I miss you guys so dearly.
It's going to be a great season when you do make it back. The trickle has begun. I know it's still August, but the trickle has begun, and it will continue all the way up through Christmas. And we're excited to have the pews full and the chairs full. And that's the other piece too. Like, you never really know exactly what's going to have changed, but there will be changes every single time you take a period of a season away. And so we're excited to share what some of those changes are, and discover maybe things that we don't realize have changed that you see, and continue that very alive conversation that you bring to the table. So we miss you. We love you. Can't wait to see you. And we'll talk to you again soon.